Hello everyone and welcome. This is not a smart thing to do while driving. You should keep both hands on the wheel. This is not even my car. In fact, I sold it a year ago to a good friend of mine. Well, I thought he was a good friend, but now he's flipping my car for profit. And this video is sponsored by Cars and Bids, an awesome car auction website created by none other than Doug DeMuro, hence why I keep saying this. Now, we'll get more into Cars and Bids later on in the video, but this car is for sale right now on Cars and Bids. You can check out the auction in the link in my video description. And so let's get into it about this car. First off, I truly believe that at some point in your life, especially if you're a car enthusiast, you need to own a Miata. It is just such an extraordinary vehicle, and it proves three really interesting points about cars that you may not otherwise learn if you don't get the experience of driving one. Now, I have been very fortunate in that I have gotten to drive all kinds of different cars out there, and because of this, I frequently get the question like, what's the most fun car you've ever driven, or what are the top 3 cars you've ever driven? And no matter what always comes to mind, there's 3 cars that always come top of mind when I get this question. Shelby GT350, which is an absolute riot, the Jaguar F-Type SVR, which is also an absolute riot, and this, the ND Mazda Miata, just an exceptional driver's car, and yet very unlike those other 2 vehicles I mentioned. So 3 interesting points here. First of all, if I'm ranking this amongst the greats, it means power is not everything. You don't have to have a ton of horsepower in order for a vehicle to be fun. And you know, the SVR, over 500 horsepower, the GT350, well over 500 horsepower, this stock, less than 200 horsepower. Now, yes, horsepower is part of the fun, hence I supercharge this thing and it makes more power. More power is good, I do believe that, but it is not the most critical, it is not the only piece of the pie. There's a lot of different elements that can make a car fun to drive, and the fact that something like this is so enjoyable while not having that much power means that it's not that critical of an element. There are other elements that also play a really big role in how much fun a car is to drive. Okay, number 2, again, looking at the different pieces of the pie, sound is not everything. The GT350 has a flat plane crank V8 that just screams past 8,000 RPM, and it sounds incredible. It is a joy to drive just listening to it. The F-Type SVR was one of the original cars that's just constantly throwing out crackles and pops and barks. It sounds so violent when you're driving it, you can't help but smile and laugh. And this does nothing for your ears. I mean, it's like, I guess there's an engine, I guess you can kind of hear it, but it doesn't sound good. Like it sounds like, all right, it's a 4-cylinder engine, the end. There's nothing thrilling about the sound of a Miata. And yet, those 2 big elements, power and sound, it doesn't have, and I still love driving this thing. And that to me, you know, it makes me optimistic about an electric future, because electric cars don't have that sound, and a lot of enthusiasts think, okay, well, there's no way they're going to be nearly as fun. But if something like this exists, which is this raw, really enjoyable driving experience, and it doesn't have that sound, why can't an EV be fun to drive, you know? And so I think the big challenge for EVs really is their weight. And that seems like a solvable problem, that we can bring the weights down. And if we create small, lightweight EVs, there can really be some true driving joy to be found in that segment. Which leads us to point number 3, and that is modern cars can be lightweight. I feel like we are fed 2 very deceitful statements very frequently by most auto manufacturers. The first one being, modern cars just have to be heavy because of modern safety standards. We're packing it with all this safety gear, we're packing it with all this modern technology, and that stuff has weight. Well, hello, here we are. This is a 2016, 26 years after the original Miata, and it's weighing only 182 pounds more. And it weighs 150 pounds less than the previous generation NC Miata. So it can be done. You can create a modern, lightweight car. There are just very few examples, and this is probably the best executed example that is sold in America. The second deceitful thing that companies do is they say like, oh, we've got this lightweight package. You can put a carbon fiber roof panel on. It'll save you 3 pounds and it costs $5,000. And it's like, okay, great. I can save 3 pounds. I spend $5,000 on a car that already weighs 4,000 pounds. It's like, what is the point? I was just looking at a review of a 3-door Mini Cooper on Car and Driver, and the thing weighed 3,000 pounds. It's like, how does a Mini Cooper, a small 3-door Mini Cooper, weigh 3,000 pounds? This is just over 2,300 pounds stock. That is a beautiful thing. It's like 500 pounds less than its next competitor, like maybe the BRZ family. I think a small part of the challenge is that modern tires are really good, and modern tires can really hide how much new cars weigh. And I love tires and I respect them for doing that, but I really do think if more people took the time and gave these cars a chance, sat in one of these things that otherwise wouldn't buy one of these cars, you would be so pleasantly surprised at how much of a difference taking out weight provides to the driving experience and how much joy it can provide. A car that doesn't sound like anything really, a car that doesn't have that much power, and yet it's so much fun to drive because it is so lightweight. There are very few cars on the road in America that weigh less than this, and those that do are not sports cars. So I mentioned companies, offering these silly gimmicky, oh, we took out weight from our car and now it only weighs 3,800 pounds. It's like, okay, whatever. Mazda actually did real work. This thing doesn't weigh that much, and they took real weight out of it. They took weight out from the AC system. These seats, they're kind of like hammocks. They kind of have like a net that you can lean back into. It's really comfortable. It helps you sit a little bit lower, which is good for tall drivers. It's a well-engineered solution that also pulls out weight from them. They've got a wider trunk opening. That means less material. They've used more high tensile strength steel. Use a stronger material, you can use less of it. They've got aluminum body panels all over the place. So they put in real effort, clever engineering solutions all over this vehicle, looked at everywhere that you have weight and tried to minimize it. And as a result, again, with a small car is certainly an important part of it, you're able to create something that doesn't weigh an atrocious amount. And I just really believe that if more people got into vehicles like this, experienced it, felt how nice it is to drive, we would have more competitive options in segments like this because of how much of a joy lightweight can provide. Everything gets better. Braking, acceleration, cornering, everything gets better. Now, another fun element of this car is simply the visibility. You put the top down, which, I haven't done. It's hot outside. Hey, it's 2023. But also, I wanted the audio to be decent, so we've got the top up. And I think, having that top down, being able to see everywhere around you, it feels more open. You're kind of out in the world. It makes you happier. I also think we just have less road rage. If we've all got our top downs, we can all actually see each other. It's like, hey, my bad, no worries. It's not this like big giant SUV, everything's tinted out, you can't see anything, and you just get super angry when someone cuts you off. It's like there's a level of communication here, there's a happiness, you're out here, it's like, oh, this is great. And so that is a touch that convertibles have, and it's just this combination of lightweight, convertible, manual transmission, rear wheel drive, 2-seater. It's just this really incredible formula that is just so enjoyable to drive. All right, well, if this car is so great, why did I sell it? Okay, before we get on to why I sold it, let's take a moment to chat cars and bids. And this is an awesome website, whether you're buying or selling your car. It's a car auction site for modern car enthusiasts, anything from the 1980s to today. And scrolling through the listings, it's very obvious this is geared towards enthusiasts with all the cars you'll see. And worth pointing out, there are several things I think Cars and Bids does extremely well. They make selling easy, they make bidding easy, they make financing easy, critically, they make shipping easy. And they do a really good job of disclosing the condition of the vehicles, even making inspections easy. Buying and selling cars is fairly complicated, but were I to design a car bidding website, and look, this is meant as a compliment, I have no aspirations, true for many aspects of my life. I would want it so that you could set up financing and shipping directly through the site, which you can do. For sellers that want to put buyers' minds at ease, they have an inspection process, and it's super detailed. But even if that's not included, there's a section dedicated to known flaws, so you know what you're getting into. It's an awesome site. So obviously you should go on there and buy this car, but shop around while you're on there, or list your own cars. Okay, so why did I sell it? Well, 3 reasons come to mind. The first one being, and I've said this before, but I really don't get attached to my cars. And that's not a reason to get rid of it, but it just means that I have no desire to hold on to them long term. I build no connection to this thing whatsoever. It's just an object that happens to be in my life at some point, and then it's gone at some point. So because of that, it's easy for me to let go of it. The second reason being, and this is probably the main reason, is that I just wasn't driving it that much. And the big reason for that is kind of two elements. One, I get to drive a lot of different press cars, and so I spend time in them, and that's fantastic and very lucky on my end, and great. The other is, I have this mechanical empathy where I don't want to take this car on short trips. So I have an electric car, I have a Crosstrek, and I had this. And the thing was, if I was going on a really short trip, only a few miles, 5 miles or less or whatever, I'd just take the electric car because this thing would never get up to temperature, and it's really not great to romp on it if you're not at operating temperature. So I thought, okay, I'll just take the Tesla. I'll drive these short distances in the EV. Well, if I'm going long distances, if I'm going on a trip or something, I'd always take the Crosstrek. It's very practical. You can fit everything, do everything. So it was only if there was a medium trip that I needed to make, I'd take the Miata. But that was just pretty rare, and so I didn't put many miles on it. It's I don't really need this thing, right? And then the third reason being is that I was really done with it as a project. So I got it exactly where I wanted it to be. I think a stock Miata is perfectly fine exactly the way it is. I did not change the suspension. I didn't change the wheels. I didn't change the brakes. I think they nailed all of that. Do I think power is good? Yes. So I gave it a supercharger. It has more power. And I did a few aesthetic mods, of course, including the yellow wrap, which I think makes it look really fun. But I got this car exactly where I think it is perfect. So as a result, I didn't want to make any additional changes on it. And because of that, it's well, I don't really even need it for the channel either. I bought it because I love Miatas, but then I wasn't driving it and I wasn't really making content with it. So it was I don't really need this thing anymore. Okay, so a very quick run through of all the mods and the costs if you were to buy all the mods and have them professionally installed. Basically the total amount to recreate what we have here. Of course, it all starts with the Edelbrock supercharger kit, which I absolutely love. This uses the same Eaton blower that you'll find on the Shelby GT500. It's just, a little smaller here. That's paired with a Fab 9 tune, an awesome shop if you're ever in the Detroit area with your Miata. The car was originally black, covered in Avery Dennison dark yellow wrap, and on top of that is XPEL's Ultimate Plus 10 paint protective film. And again, huge fan. I have these PPFs on all my cars and they hold up really well over the years. Then there's some smaller stuff like black chrome emblems, stubby antenna, aluminum pedals, and this is all on the MX-5 Club with the Brembo and BBS package. Of course, the spec to buy because it comes with limited slip diff. So recreating this car as it sits with professional installation would likely run around $40,000. But I've also signed my EE logo in an inconspicuous location within the engine bay, and can you really put a price on an illustrious YouTuber's signed ride? I say yes, about $1 for the Sharpie. Now, it probably goes without saying, but since I'm mildly recognizable on the internet, sponsors helped me out with most of these parts, and the installation of the supercharger was done by myself and Charles from Humble Mechanic. Charles is a pro, I'm more at peace with whiteboards. I'm sure at some point I will replace this with something exciting, but at the time I just thought I'm done with this as a project, I'm ready to move on. Now, just quickly here on closing out, I want to give some props to Doug DeMuro. And not because, hey, this is sponsored by Cars and Bits. You can make up your own mind on that if that's what you think this is really about. But I really do respect what Doug did because, he was already in a very successful place, right? He didn't need to create Cars and Bids, and yet he did this very public business where it could just as easily go south, right? It could have been a total flop right from the beginning, but he went for it, he got a good team in place, he created this thing, and it worked. And that is just so inspiring to see because, think of the opposite happening. If it didn't go well, it's look, super successful YouTuber can't even create another successful business. And I'm sure he had that fear initially of if I do this and it goes bust, I may look dumb about what I did. But he tried it. And even if it had failed, it would have been very respectable that he did. So it's very impressive, not only that he created it in the first place, but also that it has worked out so well. It is a genuinely really cool website. It's fun to browse through. There's all kinds of cool cars on it. I highly recommend checking it out. And again, if you'd like to buy this car, it's listed on there right now. You can check out the link in the video description. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Now what I'm going to do is turn these cameras off, put them away, put the top down, and enjoy one last ride in this Miata.